ADHD Rewired, episode 473. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host, and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection, and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free and secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups. Learn all about our award-winning coaching and accountability groups. You can co-work with us in our Adult Study Hall virtual membership community. You can do all of these things by going to our website at ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. We are here for our February live Q&A. It is Valentine's Day as we are recording this. So if you were listening to this on the podcast, I hope you had a nice Valentine's Day last month. And for all of you here, happy Valentine's Day. I am joined here by my panel of panelists, and we have, I'm going to let each person introduce themselves. So we will start it in my top right corner with Mr. Will Kerb of Hacking Your ADHD. Hello, Will.
Happy to be here. Looking forward to having a good Valentine's Day here. We got snow up here in Washington. It is very strange.
Ooh,
we had school canceled,
weird.
So I'm like, okay, good Valentine's Day, I guess.
And we got MJ from ADHD Diversified.
Howdy doody, buckaroonies. Happy Self-Love Day.
Happy Self-Love Day, MJ. And we have Kat Hoyer, ADHD Rewired coach. How you doing, Kat?
Apparently struggling, not finer than frog hair split three ways today. Was trying to find the unmute button. And my messy bun keeps disappearing, and I'm very distracted by it.
And we have Kirsten Martz, also ADHD Rewired coach.
Happy Valentine's Day. And Kat, I'm calling it the blurbun. Like it's a blurbun.
I like it. Hashtag blurbun.
Somebody finally explained the finer than a frog, whatever you said. I was having trouble with it because I didn't know a frog had hair. That's what I finally figured out.
When you said blur bun, it made me think about like what happened when I turned 50 to my backside.
What is happening?
And we have Lisa Ciesla, my executive assistant and community manager. Hey, Lisa.
Hi, everyone. Happy Valentine's Day. That was wild.
All right. And we have Jim, who is going to be asking the first question today. How's it going, Jim?
Going well. I work with college students, and I'm interested in a little more information on how to help them with flexibility. Some kind of rigid thinking, but kind of also so focused on getting their homework done, getting things done right. So anyways, how do I help them with flexibility?
And you said you work with college students.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot of, well, let me first identify that mental flexibility is one of those areas of ADHD that I don't think is talked about enough, but I think part of it has to do with sequencing and sort of the order that we do things. But then it's also our ability to prioritize and reprioritize as something kind of comes up. I have a shirt that says, I am perfectly flexible as long as everything goes exactly the way I want it to. So part of it is beginning with the piece of self-awareness, right? Like, do the students actually identify, and are they recognizing that they are struggling with some flexibility? So when you're talking with the students, has that been an issue? Like, are they self-aware to know this?
Yeah, they're aware. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So some of the things that I've seen more from clinically is doing things that are, I don't know, kind of like the practice runs of flexibility. Like, encouraging people to maybe brush their teeth with the opposite hand, or to sit in a different spot than they usually do. So the stuff that's kind of like low risk to kind of get their brain sort of ready and practicing doing things a little bit differently.
Right.
I think also just the verbalization of saying, okay, this is not what I was expecting to happen. this feels hard to adjust, and just kind of verbalizing what like how it's feeling and what's happening sort of in the brain can also be helpful. You know, when I get thrown a curveball during the day, the first thing I try to do is look at my calendar, because that's going to be the tool where I can actually like move stuff around versus in my head where I just freeze. Now, if we go ahead.
No, just helping them to take a pause, right? Because it's so automatic, right? I get into a situation, it's not going like I want. I get frustrated. I go to my give up, quit kind of phase. And anyways, like you said, developing the pause, slowing it down.
And, and it could even, depending on how significant it is, even play some games, like give them like a paperclip and say, come up with 10 uses for this other than a paperclip. All right. So it sort of primes the brain to think about things in flexible ways. Kristen?
So I have also wondered if there is it's a self-awareness component like you're talking about, identifying that they're exhibiting inflexibility, and then what's the why behind it? Could it be that they are, depending on what they're being inflexible about, maybe they don't want to do math before they do their English homework, and I'm speaking in real simplistic terms for college, sorry. And it's the idea of, but I just came from that math class. I don't want to forget what I'm doing. And they're being inflexible because they're trying to protect the memory. Or maybe it's the expectation. Maybe the inflexibility comes from they expect to struggle with a certain subject of their homework and not struggle with the other, and so they want to stay there. So I think if you can peel the layer of the onion back a little more and find out what the why is, and they may not be aware of it yet, but having that conversation could possibly help with getting to the core of that. And then what can you do around that? I think us with ADHD, and it really, I think, aligns with a lot of autism, is expectation is a big deal. So talking about it beforehand too, talking about, hey, remember last time, if you can pick up on any cues from them, Jim, from first visit, and going, remember last time you really struggled with this, talking about it because it's a little bit distant. And that may set them up for their session at that point.
Cool. Thank you.
Kat?
Hi, Jim. I'm wondering how much of when you say inflexibility, is there any perfectionism aligned in that or kind of combined in that? Are you finding?
Yeah, I think so. And really, just to clarify a couple of things, I do work individually with students, but I also work in a group with executive functioning stuff. So it's kind of a myriad of both of those groups. So yeah, perfectionism does come into play. I think the pressure is like, I've got to get A's so I can go on to my next thing, right? So there's, at least for one student, there's this huge pressure to just always get A's. And so the structure they design for themselves is just like, this hour of the day I do this, then I do this. If I don't study at this hour, then it gooses me up for the rest of the day. And it just becomes this cycle of, it just kind of melts down after that. So anyways, there is that perfectionism.
Okay. And I'm wondering if, reflecting back on with the students about times that, when I write down, celebrate the unplanned journeys, or, thinking about a time in their past that things didn't go as planned, but there was something positive that came of it, so that they can understand that they're safe to have those kinds of experiences. Because the first thing I thought of when you were saying that was psychological safety and, understanding and feeling safe when things do go off course.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'm wondering, in your group setting, are they identifying more of some perfectionistic tendencies? Because one of the things that I've seen a lot in our groups is that people will come in not realizing that they actually are struggling with perfectionism. And then they, as we kind of working through stuff in a group setting, there's like, oh, I think that I have more issues with perfectionism than I maybe realize.
Sure, that's part of it.
And I think normalizing it too, and there is this, I don't know if there's actually a specific name for it, but there's this idea of, it's like the loss of come on, words, work with me here, Brian. What is it? Help me. If you work on something for, say, an hour and you get, like, say, an 85%, or you work on something for like 15 hours.
Oh, sure.
And something of diminishing returns.
Yeah. The
law of diminishing returns?
Probably ratio law, something like that.
I'm looking in the chat for someone to bail me out of this. Okay. But the idea is if you kind of show, okay, so if you get a high B and this is 1 hour of your life, or you spend 15 hours getting a little bit of a better grade, like, is that worth it? Right? Usually it's not.
Right.
Right. So it's helping people have these frameworks to kind of think through this and to be able to identify that. And yes, we got a confirmation from Jacqueline in the chat. Thank you, Jacqueline, for law of diminishing returns. I knew I'd get there eventually. All right. Thank you, Jim, for your question.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet. All right. Who do we have next?
So this is from Jeff. I'm feeling more comfortable about returning to work, but my weak spots are a part of my daily work. Time management, project management, time blindness, distractions. Where would you feel is the best place to try and put my efforts in preparation for a return to the office? I want to make a healthy buffer when I return so I don't freeze up again.
I have more questions with this than I do answers at this very moment. I think that time awareness that's where we start in our coaching groups, because I think that is the foundational skill that all other planning skills are really built on, right? And it's not just about like learning how long things take. That's like part of it. But I think the even more important part of it is learning what is the difference between what your gut tells you, how long something will take, and how long the thing actually takes you. Because if you track a bunch of stuff, you're going to find a pretty reliable ratio or difference between what your gut says and what it actually is. So you can use that gut feeling, but then apply the wisdom, right? So I know if I'm looking at a project, I'm like, all right, that'll take me like an hour. I know that is probably about a 3-hour project. And I will actually I'll kind of do this script with myself where I'm like, all right, I think it's an hour. Could it be 2? Yeah, this could take 2. 3? Probably not. And it's usually when I get to that probably not point, that's usually around the time that how long the thing will take. Kristen?
Yeah, I also think because it all sounds around time, even the distraction piece in my mind, identifying the time spent in transition in however you want to go about doing that, using time tracking could help with that too. And then allowing for that time, permitting it to be in your plan for your projects and your different blocks of work.
MJ?
So when I got temporarily laid off and then we were back to work again, it took a little bit of, muscle memory in a sense to relive those transitions that I had, like when I was still going to the office. So a big part of sort of what helps me with transitions and minimizing distractions while I'm trying to get out the door, and it's easier than it sounds for some people, not easy for me, but having like a placeholder by the door with the things that I need to get out the door. So yes, there's, the routine of like showering, getting ready for the day, packing lunch, but everything traveling to the door is on my way to grab. So I'm not going back and forth between different rooms. Say if I'm going to bed, we live in a 4-level split. So everything from downstairs to upstairs is on the way. I shouldn't have a reason to have to go back downstairs because 1, I don't want to. And 2, if I'm already upstairs, I just already want to have done all my routines, brushed my teeth, clean the litter box, and gone to bed. So it's the same thing going out, is creating those sort of points of performance and having things in place as much as I can that cues me like, this is this transition spot of the house. This is this transition spot of the house, whether it's with sticky notes or the physical items that I need just to sort of trail me on out the door so that I can get out the door on time to get to the office. And of course, once I'm at the office, that's a whole different story, but at least to start that transition, just that first thing to get me going, to give me confidence of, okay, I'm building that routine again from not being in the office and not having that routine before. I hope that makes sense.
Kat?
Because it said I'm returning to work, it makes me believe that this person was working from home. So I'm wondering about being able to look at what worked and what didn't work while at home. So what was the environment like that helped with like distractions or that did help with that time management? and what didn't work. And then being able to take that into the workplace to advocate, to have a discussion, to talk to coworkers about, hey, this is one of the things that helped me was that I could put my headphones on while I was focusing on a project. So, those kinds of things, or even talking to supervisor, boss, something like that. And I'm wondering, especially, I would love to have these kinds of dialogues in the workplace where people could say this, it doesn't mean that you're disclosing any type of neurodiversity. You can know what works for you and what doesn't, and then advocate on your own behalf. And I bet other people would appreciate it as well.
And also say, be mindful of the ADHD productivity sleep cycle, where you go to bed too late because you stayed up late to finish work. So you only get 5 hours of sleep. So you're kind of distracted and not very focused during the day. So then you stay up late to finish work, right? So are there going to be times where we have to work later than we want to? Absolutely. But we have to be really, really careful not to make it a way that we work, right? That should be definitely an exception and not the rule. I think it is very short-sighted. It is something that I did that for at least a decade of my life, and it doesn't work, right? Like we think it does. We think we got to be doing something, and that's part of that perfectionism. But once we really recognize, oh, my brain actually works way better when I'm getting regular sleep and exercising and all those things that are helpful for the brain. Because I think sometimes we can get so almost like nervous about screwing something up because of our ADHD that like we end up digging our own hole that we're trying to prevent from falling into. All right, let's go to one more question and then we'll take a quick break. We got Chris. Hello, Chris. All right, what is your question?
Well, hello. I did not expect to be put on the hot seat like this, but I'm 53 years old. I recently discovered 6 months ago that I'm extremely ADHD. I'm self-employed, so it's harder for me to get to work. I don't have a job where I have to be there at 9 o'clock. Plus, I've got the usual PTSD, depressive, antidotes that typically go along with ADHD. So before I let you answer my question, I would like to also state I've been with a psychologist and a psychiatrist recently, and I'm beginning my journey, and it's tough, but let us all just continue to fight this journey we're on. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for your question, Chris. Will.
Yeah, this is very hard when you don't have the structure to your day from a traditional job to do this. And so one of the best things you can do is find ways to build that structure in artificially into your day. Be it like, oh, I'm going to go to a coffee shop to, start some work, or have an accountability partner that you just text with in the morning or meet up with on a Zoom call. That kind of thing can be really helpful for being like, I have this built-in structure to my day, so then I can follow that, because I get it a lot from my kids, because I'm like, well, I have to take them to the school, and then that gives me the ability to a lot more easily transition into the next phase of what I need to do. And it's what we were talking about, transitions really applies here too, is the reason that can be hard to get to work is that we just go, oh, I'm going to sit down and start working. One thing I've heard Brendan talk about a lot is that like how the commute is actually a really important thing for us with ADHD, because it gives us that built-in transition and getting our brain ready to work. And so maybe create your own little commute to getting ready to work, and that can help get you going.
Chris, I got a question. You said that you have a hard time starting work at 9 o'clock. You're self-employed.
Yes.
Do you have to start work at 9 o'clock?
No.
What do you do?
I recently have just been finding myself literally wandering around the house, finishing or creating little itty bitty tasks to do. And none of them are what is important for my day. None of them are what I need to do. There are some times when I'm doing all these little shit things and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. But yet it's still so freaking hard. Oh my gosh.
Okay. So do you work out?
I don't. I know I need to improve that.
I know I've probably said this a gazillion times on the show, but I think that cardio exercise is one of the most important things, non-medicine wise, that we could do for our ADHD. There was a while last year where I was coming in at 9 o'clock, when Lisa started and we had a transition of my assistants, and I had about 3 weeks to get her as trained as I could because I was going to Mexico for a week. And I just sort of continued this 9 a.m. thing. it was great in certain areas, but my exercise routine slipped. And it took me a little while, but I really noticed that it was having a negative impact on my overall productivity and mental health, right? So if you are able to do some workout, some exercise in the morning, and if you have accountability with that, whether maybe you're doing it an exercise class, or maybe you find your local pickleball group, something, you just say you're in your 50s, so you're kind of perfect age demographic, right? So, it's have fun with it, but like get those neurotransmitters, going through sort of the routine of your day. And you're working from home too?
50-50. I'm self-employed, so I'm forcing myself to come into the office more because I tend to have a little bit more structure and be more successful with the time blindness when I'm in my office structure versus home.
How far is your office away from home?
About 12 to 15 minutes.
Nice job. All right. So, mine's like 5 minutes, and I'm like, don't let me work more than 10 minutes because and here's the thing, like I could do this work from home. Like in theory, in practice, I do what you do, right? If I work from home, I do all these other things. And it's just, so for me, like it's really important to be out of the home. So what if you made it more of an exception than the rule? Like you go to the office, like you work from home when, if you're not feeling well, or I don't know, you haven't done laundry in 2 months, whatever the reason is, but make that more of an exception than the rule if you're saying you actually do better when you go to the office.
The structure of the office definitely helps. And it's just absolutely remarkably amazing to me so my psychologist has very gently been telling me, exercise. I have known this to be true, but yet I just find it so incredibly weird how hard it is to do the basic things that would be so helpful to us. So thank you for repeating it for like the 5th time, because I think finally, when you said it though, I was just like, here's yet another person telling me, and I've listened to your podcast and I've listened to Will's, and exercise is critical. And thank you for the nudge. Even though I knew it, I needed to hear it again.
Oh, and there's so many things that we all here know, and yet we don't. This is ADHD. It's like we know what to do, but we're not doing what we know. And for all the significant others in our lives who don't have ADHD and are frustrated by seeing our good intentions not turn into actions, it is twice as frustrating for us as people with ADHD.
Yeah.
Process. MJ?
So I am an assistant for somebody else virtually who also either work from home or from the office. If you have anybody that you can meet with, whether it's like on Zoom or in person, that also depends on you being there, like somebody you can also get launched with. I have found that to be helpful for me. The person that I work with has also found it helpful for them, and they are also neurodivergent because that is what they need. They need somebody else, not just the text. Like if they really need to get launched, we set a time and this is when we meet. And that's, we go over to-dos for the day or the week. Even if we're repeating some of the same things, having that structure and knowing that somebody is depending on me to be there, that I'm depending on somebody else to be there, sort of helps me get launched too, even though like I could theoretically do stuff at any time. Right. So I need that structure for myself. And I've found that to be very valuable in addition to the exercise part.
Awesome. All right, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we will have more of your questions. So thank you, everyone who has been submitting questions, and we will get to more of them right after the break. Since 2014, ADHD reWired's award-winning coaching and accountability groups have helped over 1,000 adults with ADHD to live more intentional and wholehearted lives. We're just about to wrap up our winter season of coaching groups, which means our spring sessions are just around the corner, starting on March 30th and goes through June 8th. And just in case it's been a while since you've looked at your calendar and you're not sure what the date is, this episode came out on March 14th. That means our spring sessions start in just 2 weeks. So don't wait. Go to coachingrewired.com to get your name added to our spring interest list and start your pre-registration process so you can join us for our next registration event happening tomorrow on Wednesday, March 15th at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Does it feel like ADHD holds you back from achieving your goals? Are you unsure of the goals you want to set? What if you could gain clarity on what you want out of your life to build wisdom around where you're really spending your time, to take charge of your calendar, and to give yourself permission to dream big and live a wholehearted and intentional life? Imagine how transformative your life could be if you created a personalized, actionable plan that works with your unique ADHD brain while learning alongside other adults with ADHD who just get it. Because here at ADHD Rewired, our coaching and accountability groups are more than just about the tools. We are rooted in connection, compassion, and acceptance. And we believe that no one should have to navigate life on their ADHD journey alone.
Connection and support are everything. There's nothing like having a group of people where it's safe to talk about your struggles, to share the things that are hardest, to not be judged for those things, and to actually be embraced and helped for that.
A win, I think, would be learning the value of goal making, even at my age. And I am doing so many things every single day that I wanted to do and never got done.
The moments that were most meaningful were the little epiphanies that you see in others during sessions, just the small judgment-free check-ins like on the A team, all the way to like admin office hours or just even like community events.
Being able to talk to my peers and find out like, oh, these are also problems that other people have, and it's not just me being lazy or unmotivated has been incredibly helpful, to the point where my A team we've already got plans for meeting regularly well into the future.
I feel that I had tried things before, but I never felt like, maybe in my perfectionism, I never felt like I had found the perfect thing. And one thing I learned here was that good enough, like you don't need to have something that's absolutely perfect. Does it do the job you need it to do?
I don't feel like I'm a failure anymore. I've gotten more done in the last 10 weeks than I had done in the previous 3 or 4 years.
If you're thinking about joining this group, it's worth it to crack your own code.
And I just want to thank everybody for being here, because it's so powerful to just listen and be with everybody else. Thank you.
So if you're done with just trying harder and are ready for something different, then don't wait. Our spring session starts in just 2 weeks, so don't let this one pass you by. Go to coachingrewired.com to start your pre-registration process by clicking on the big purple button on the top of the page. Registration is by invitation only, so once you've added your name to our spring interest list at coachingrewired.com, instructions will be sent to you with what you need to complete to join us for our next registration event tomorrow on Wednesday, March 15th at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And if you missed that one, check the website for our next event, but there's not much time left. Go to coachingrewired.com to take the next step. That's coachingrewired.com. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from you, our listeners. We are grateful for your support every week, and we wouldn't be here without you. And if you're new to ADHD Rewired, welcome. If you don't want to miss out on our weekly shows, then hit subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast player. Need to access our show notes and resources for each episode? Then go to ADHDrewired.com/podcast to find everything from show notes to our podcast archives and more. And ADHD Rewired is not alone. We have other podcasts here on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network that you can find out about by going to ADHDrewired.com/podcast network. Then if you want to pick our brains and get answers to your ADHD related questions, you could join me, the rest of the ADHD Rewired podcast family, and ADHD Rewired coaches every second Tuesday of the month for our monthly live Q&A. If you are listening to this episode early enough on the day it came out, you won't want to miss this one, because today at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern, we will be joined by a special guest panelist, the host of the Sleep With Me podcast, Drew Ackerman. You might know him as Scoots. We are super excited to have him on the show for something a little different. Don't miss out. Go to ADHDrewired.com/events to get registered and to join us on Zoom live today, 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. But if you can't make it, then don't worry. You'll still be able to listen in when the recording of this month's live Q&A gets released next month. Otherwise, go to ADHDrewired.com to find everything from show notes to our coaching groups, study hall, and more. That's ADHDrewired.com. And we're back. All right, Lisa, what is the next question?
It says, I would like to hear from the panel about how adults with ADHD can manage/heal the grief and trauma associated with the lifelong losses incurred by the previously unmanaged condition.
I love this question. And while this, my immediate answer to this may seem like it's self-serving, but it's not. And that's group and community. One of the reasons that I no longer do any one-on-one stuff is because of the healing power of group. And it's a coaching group. It is not a therapy group, but it is really damn therapeutic. The healing power that happens when you are working through these kinds of things, and we kind of normalize the challenges, and we realize, you know what? There's something like, as Kat likes to say, what is it? We can be a hot mess and kicking ass at the same time.
You can be a hot mess and killing it at the same time.
Right. And I think recognizing that, that's okay. Like, it's okay that we don't all have our shit together all the time. I don't have my shit together all the time. And I think just knowing that is really helpful, and really helpful in the healing. Will?
I definitely echo what Eric was just saying about group and talk about these issues, because a lot of the trauma is from the shame we feel about it. And shame lives in the dark and festers and gets worse. So it's a lot of, hey, I have learned so much about just like, hey, if I don't hold on to the shame doesn't hold on to me nearly as much. So a lot of that's just talking about it. Sometimes you can journal through it, but I find shame is really hard to journal through because it tries to build upon itself. So even if you don't do group, something like therapy is also really helpful in this thing. But probably just talk therapy and less CBT, because that's shame and trauma don't work as well with CBT.
Yeah, there's been some stuff on CBT and ADHD that is, I think that if we are well informed about ADHD, I think that CBT is still an evidence-based therapy. I think there has been some stuff I've been hearing about, like CBT is gaslighting for neurodivergent brains. Like, it is not gaslighting for neurodivergent brains unless you have a shitty therapist. But that could happen anywhere in any context. But just want to be really clear about that in case people are seeing that CBT is an evidence-based therapy, but we want to have our therapists be ADHD informed. Kristen?
Well, and I think what Will shared and you shared is a combination of things, with the idea that grief does need some different approaches, I believe. And I'm LCSW, so and do practice. So there are two parts to that. There's the healing the grief and trauma, and it's the idea of the ADHD. I love that this person put the word manage in the question, because one thing I have grown to understand better through my own experiences with grief, and then as being a practicing therapist, is that you don't just heal it and it's done. You work to embrace it. You expect that it's going to pop up at any time, a trigger of the grief of the loss of my dad or something like that. And it is being able to sit in it and identify that feeling and be okay with what that feeling is all about. And that's where you're trying to heal and embrace that and accept it. And then the management part comes in with that coaching piece. And that's where you work to reframe. You learn what your script is in your head, which is the CBT part, cognitive-based therapy, if anybody doesn't know what that means. So I find this to be a really more complicated question than as it just appears. It really is. There's a lot of layers to it for me.
All right. MJ.
So when I think about the things that I didn't do or the things that I could have done because of not knowing sooner, I also reflect on if things hadn't gone the way that they went, there's a strong chance that I would probably be doing something now that I hate doing just because I knew, versus being able to sort of have that flexibility and struggle quite a bit to be able to get to do what I do now. And that's been a lot of self-work. But I also don't think I would be at the level of acceptance that I'm at without having a community of people that I can relate to. Like, it's not just ADHD folks. It's a whole neurodivergent community out there that's like, okay, so it's not just me. It's not just you. It's not just us. And some days it's still hard, where it's like, I could have done this. I could have been that. I could have been this or that, but who would I be without it? What kind of person would I be without being neurodivergent? Would I be as empathetic and understanding as I am? Would I be as open to change and open to wanting things to be better for other people and maybe for me? Like, would I be that person if I didn't know? And with all of that acceptance and being able to relate to others who are grieving, have grieved, have recovered from grief, etc., helped me like push myself to go to therapy to work through more of the emotional stuff that comes with sort of managing that grief. Because yeah, I do still think about what I could have been. And now I need to accept who I have been and who I am now with people who get it. So community, maybe therapy if you're ready for it. I know that I'm doing some CBT-based exercises, but I would not be able to do that without having community and accepting that these were the cards that were dealt. This is the timeline that they were dealt in. We didn't have a choice, but I have a choice to do what I want with the life that I've been given and the brain that I've been given, as hard as it is.
Thanks, MJ. Kat?
So I have so many thoughts on this because this was a lot of what I went through with my ADHD journey. When I was first diagnosed, I had heard like how so many people felt a sense of relief that it explained kind of what had happened in their past. For me, it was a completely different response. It was like, oh shit, all those mornings of waking up and going, today is going to be different. Today I'm going to do all the things I wanted to do. And so that hope felt like it was pulled out away from me. But then I knew about the 5 stages of grief. I knew about how they helped me with other things in my life, the loss of a job, the loss of a relationship or a marriage. So I approached it with that, looking at that as well. But what has really helped me is this new 6th stage of grief that is popping up, and that is finding meaning in it. So going through that and knowing that the stages aren't linear, it's not a checkbox. We're not going to go through and, okay, I'm done with anger. I'm done with bargaining. It may be cyclical, especially with us, because we have a lot of times where we learn things and then maybe forget them, and different things will come up in life that will remind us. But then it's that finding meaning in it. And for me, it was about, I wouldn't be the person that I am today. Like my ability to mask, fortunately, has also helped me be adaptable to a lot of different situations. So that's something where I can find the meaning in it. And looking at, because of the things that I've experienced, it's allowed me to be more empathetic. So that finding the meaning in it has been probably one of the most helpful things I've done along the way in accepting that I can't change the past, but I can change how I view it now that I understand it better.
Thanks,
the end.
Kat. That was brilliantly said. And with the stages of grief too, I think that when we're looking at grief of a diagnosis like ADHD, there's no wrong emotion. And I think that's a really important sort of piece. Like it's okay to feel angry about this sometimes. It's okay to be really sad about this sometimes. The key is don't get stuck there. If you notice that you're just spinning your wheels in anger, or you're spinning your wheels in sadness, that's a sign you're stuck, right? And when you're stuck, someone's got to reach out for help with that. But I think that the meaning making piece is huge. It's huge, and I've always sort of thought about that in the realm of acceptance. But I think that really it's a good distinguishing factor. Make meaning. I think we could find meaning in everything that happens. So I hope that helps. All right, what is the next question? Hello, is it Lily?
Hello, panelists. I really appreciate you. I am trying to get some ideas for how to make the kitchen cleaning so much more exciting and fun. It's in my mind, I'm a very clean person. In reality, I'd love to be able to go into the kitchen and say, wow, what a beautiful place. It's not supposed to be a museum, don't get me wrong. It just looks like potentially 2 mentally ill people live here who have never met a pot pan or a dust mop or... Ugh.
I hear you. Okay. So the very first thought that I had when you asked your question, how do you make cleaning more fun and exciting in the kitchen? I just imagined monkeys cleaning your kitchen. That would make it so fun. Watch our monkeys, they're cleaning the kitchen. Okay, let's come back to reality here. So what if we could make it easier? I mean, there's the sort of the easy fun things like put on some music or a podcast, to make it I think one of the things is if we can simplify the process as much as possible.
Yeah.
And I get that we might want to add fun to things to make our brain a little bit more engaged in it, but sometimes we just want to get it done.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm just wondering, like, what are some of the things that you might be able to do that would make keeping or getting the kitchen clean easier?
Getting rid of all the plastics that we have that are no longer recyclable. And I look at them coming out. First of all, they don't work in the dishwasher, and I don't particularly love hand rinsing them. So maybe all glass and colors. And the podcast, I mean, I've been listening to that. It's just, I have to remind myself, this is a part of self-care. Maybe if there was some easier way to put all this fresh produce into the fridge so we'd actually see it, know what the hell we're eating, and I don't know, have some fairies wash up the floor.
Yeah. I mean, I can relate to so much of this. I don't know what how long I've been able to keep a kitchen clean for, but like if I can go a full week and the kitchen is maintained clean, like I'm having a good week. I can usually keep it clean for about 4 days, and then the executive function goes, not today.
That's a long time.
Will?
Yeah, that is a long time. Also, because it's important to remember for cleaning that it's never a completed task. You're never done, which is very hard for us because we want to check it off and then be like, well, I'm done with that for a while. Like with my kids, I'm like, how are you making so many dishes every day? It's like, oh, because you're eating. You got to do that. One of the things that's been really helpful for me recently is doing a lot of my household cleaning tasks as breaks from my other tasks.
Yeah.
So I will set like a timer to work for 45 minutes, and then my break is to go and do the dishes. And that's super helpful for my brain being just like, oh, this is in between.
Yeah. Very, very good points.
That's great. Kat?
The first thing that came into my mind was dance. Like you have to dance while you clean the kitchen. That's everything. But as cliche as they may be, it is my time to listen to podcasts and do different things like that. But I actually have like a little, like the thing that you put in your car for your phone, like on the windshield, like that will hold your phone. I have one of those on my microwave. So I can have my phone in there. And I use it, for all kinds of things. But be careful, because if it sticks out too far, you'll forget it's there and bump your head. Just saying, and it hurts. But another thing, when you mentioned the plastics, that was something that I had to really let go of. Certain types of recycling. It hurts my heart to say that I throw away a lot of things now that I would have recycled before, because I wasn't taking it where it needed to go to get recycled. And, that builds on itself. So I had to let go of some of those types of things, and then slowly making my area more ADHD friendly, one project at a time, little things. My favorite is to put my phone up on a tripod. I have to put it doesn't work on the microwave because it doesn't have the right angle, and record it on time lapse.
Ooh.
And if you work for a half an hour, you get a 2-minute reward of watching yourself in fast motion cleaning your kitchen. And it's so much fun. Yeah, I highly recommend the time lapse thing. For some reason, for me, that's just like, I feel like almost now I let things get dirtier just so that I can do the time lapse thing. That might not be true, but it makes me feel better in my mind. But the one thing I had heard it on with Casey Davis, and she talks about when cleaning with any type of depression or anything like that. And she has a word for it, struggle care. But she talks about doing these 5 different things. First, go around the area and look for any trash that you can throw away. Second, look for any dishes, because then we know where to put the dishes. That's a little bit different in the kitchen. And then the third is looking for laundry, which that might end up in my kitchen. I don't know, depending on how crazy the dancing gets.
Happens in my kitchen. My son's socks are constantly like everywhere in the house.
And then things with a home and things without a home. But I wouldn't recommend doing your whole kitchen with this list of 5. I would recommend finding like a quadrant or a drawer or a counter, so that you're doing it in little increments, and give yourself some grace through that process, because it can take a while.
You guys totally rock. Thank you.
That's awesome. It's 2 things. One of the things that I have been, I've gotten a lot better at, definitely not perfect at this, is when I'm having the I don't wannas. I I just ate dinner. I have a plate and I don't want to clean it. But what I have now remembered is that it takes about half the time to clean a plate right away than it does to have to chisel the hardened food that has been sitting there for a day. So anytime I kept myself thinking I'll do it later, I take a breath, I pause, I turn around, and I try to do it right then. Like other things of like engineering urgency. So like yesterday, I made some steamed vegetables as part of our dinner. And as I was waiting for my son to come to the table, I was like, all right, let me see if I can get this pot cleaned before we actually eat. Right. So it's like, I know he's going to be at the table in about a minute. Right. Let me see if I can quickly clean this pot. Because like pots too, like you let pots sit, like they become exponentially harder to clean. If you do it right away, literally sometimes it just takes water. So we never really want to clean. So think about what's going to make it easier doing it now or doing it later. Kat, you mentioned the recycling. What I have at my house, it's not a laundry basket, but it almost looks like a laundry basket, but it's like a big square. It's kind of like it's like fabric, and we put a big bag liner in it. It's not under the sink, but it's sort of right behind the counter, so I can literally just like walk over. It's 3 steps away from the sink and toss the recycling stuff in there. Once it gets full, then I bring it to the recycling bin. All right, let's take one more quick break. And when we come back, let's try to answer some more of your questions. So we will be right back. Are you in the middle of a house project you've been putting off? Is your laundry starting to pile up? How about those kitchen counters? How are they looking? Or maybe you need to organize your paperwork so you can file your taxes on time. If you think that you would benefit from real-time accountability working beside other adults with ADHD who are also working on the things that they want to get done, then come work with us in our ADHD-friendly body doubling community at adultstudyhall.com. From our weekly guided sessions, also known as Adult Study Hall Plus or ASH Plus, to our 24/7 drop-in room, there are plenty of ways that you can utilize the power of real-time accountability to start crossing off your to-dos and not have to do them alone. Membership is only $19.99 a month, and it's free to try for the first week. If you're motivated by working with others while being able to talk through and check in on your progress, then join our Adult Study Hall Plus sessions, our themed and guided sessions that happen every week. But if you prefer to work at your own pace and still need some company, then our 24/7 drop-in room or ASH 24/7 is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Whether you need to clean out your car, clean out your fridge, get ready for tax season, or finish a project, or write a resume, bring you and your next task to Adult Study Hall at adultstudyhall.com, where you'll never have to work alone again. Try it free for the first week, and it's only $19.99 a month after that. Come work with us. That's adultstudyhall.com. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from our Patreon community. Thanks to Drew C. and Mike M. for joining us on Patreon this week. If we've been able to provide you with valuable tips and tricks that you've been able to add to your ADHD tool belt, or you love what you hear because you relate to our guests and their stories we share, one way that you can show your support is by becoming a patron over at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. When you support us on Patreon at $5 a month or more, you can get ad-free episodes of this show, or what we're actually doing now is putting the ads at the very end, so you can still hear what we are doing here at ADHD Rewired, but you don't have to get interrupted during the episode by those ads. And at $25 a month, you can join me for our coaching call that happens every 4th Tuesday of the month, which means our next monthly coaching call is on Tuesday, March 28th at 3 p.m. Central. Don't want to miss the tips and tricks that we share each month during those calls? Then patrons who give $10 a month can get the audio recordings of those monthly coaching calls in our patron-only podcast feed. And I really do think you'll enjoy these. They are raw, they are unedited. I don't know where they're going to go, and it's real, genuine coaching. So check those out. $10 a month, you can hear those. We really want to thank all of our patrons for supporting our passion for sharing ADHD awareness and helping you feel seen, understood, and less alone through the stories that we share each week. So if you want to support our work and get extra perks, then consider becoming a patron by going to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. Support can start at any amount that makes sense to you and get ad-free episodes or ads at the end of the episode for just $5 a month by going to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. And thank you so much. Oh, I just wanted to mention that Brendan could not be here today. He had a family thing that he had to attend to. So we are back, and Lisa is going to read the next question.
All right. It says, question in the context of differential diagnosis for adults. Are there mental health or neurological condition or combination of conditions that causes an adult to display the entire range of EF challenges in adults? How can impaired adults advocate for a diagnosis and get support in the case nobody in their life noticed symptoms in their childhood?
Well, as far as like how can an impaired adult advocate for a diagnosis, talk to your psychiatrist, your psychologist, your therapist. This is some weird stuff that I've seen on some like therapist groups that I'm in. That like someone's part of a group practice and they're saying, "Oh, but we're not allowed to diagnose ADHD." That's BS. Yes, you are. If you are a licensed like clinician, you are allowed to diagnose ADHD. But you know what? Not everyone gets ADHD, right? So if you are seeking out that diagnosis, one of the questions you can ask is how much of your practice is working with people with adult ADHD? Yeah, and we know that ADHD often comes with friends, anxiety, depression, learning disabilities, autism. There's lots of stuff that comes along with ADHD. And, ADHD doesn't own executive dysfunction, by the way. Like there's executive dysfunction in a lot of other disorders. I think the sequence and how it kind of shows up can be a little bit different. But yeah, the executive function piece, that's like the functional impairment piece. And that's actually the stuff that matters most is like the functional impairment. Kristen?
So I think for some clarity, it's not that we can't diagnose it. It's a matter of, will insurance accept that diagnosis? Because of paying for the medications, there's a lot of hoops to jump through. And I think it's state to state and obviously country to country. And because I've been having some conversations with some of my friends online, and if they're in like California or a different state, they are very challenged apparently. Like my GP diagnosed it for me and I guess provided all the appropriate paperwork needed so that I'm covered. So I think that is actually where the challenges are. Now, what you were saying, how executive function can show up in other places, there's the idea behind, yeah, and does it present like ADHD? Could some of interventions that are out there still be helpful? So the diagnosis is really a guide to which direction do you need to go, because what is presenting for helping yourself and for getting the bill paid. And so that is really the bigger part of the challenge. You still can get the diagnosis. It's what can you do with it?
Yeah, I say the diagnosis is a starting point, but it's not like, what's the best treatment for ADHD? It's like, well, that is a really super broad question. Medication.
Yeah. Like I worked for an agency, Eric, and they said, you all cannot diagnose ADHD alone because it won't get covered and we're not going to treat that patient. So if that patient doesn't have a friend or that client doesn't have a friend that comes with it, like anxiety and meets the criteria, we don't accept them. So it goes down into, sort of that meso level too, of private organization can set those standards too.
Yeah, I was talking actually to someone from my current coaching group who lives in a country where it is illegal to have any kind of stimulant medication. And it just seems so unfair because that's the top most effective evidence-based treatment is meds work. Will?
I was going to add on to the, if no one noticed the symptoms in childhood, it's because sometimes they don't really present in childhood, which is now something that is being explored. But a lot of the older research says if you did not have ADHD in childhood, you cannot have it in adulthood, which is just not true. It's because if you have stressful situations that can exacerbate symptoms, and then you can start presenting them. I was also reading a paper yesterday about delayed circadian rhythm in ADHD and how as you turn into a teenager, that can make it so that now you do have all the symptoms of ADHD because as you become a teenager, your circadian rhythm naturally changes. And so then with the delayed circadian rhythm, it can become a huge problem. And so then that's why we're seeing more people being like, hey, I have ADHD in adulthood and did not have it in childhood, when that was not something that people believed was possible before.
Right. And especially the inattentive presentation too. Like, that's what I was, which is why I was not diagnosed until I was 19. Kristen?
The reverse of this is true also. Not only what Will was saying about the stressors get bigger, interventions can be in place for you that you didn't know were interventions. I was in dance. Dance provided me a lot of intervention work that I had no idea. And I would get excused for, leaping and dancing across aisles in the grocery stores and running into people. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, she loves to dance. Nobody looked at it as, oh, she's hyper and impulsive. So there is that effect too. So in thinking about reflecting on your history, see if you can find some of those, alerts, red flags for yourself.
All right. Let's do another question.
We have one that says, what are the helpful visual cues to keep track of time?
Clocks. Clocks, timers. Time timer is a great one. I just got flicked off by cat. No, but like it is though, right? I mean, big clocks. Like I have clocks on like every wall in my office. Like I am a big fan of big ass clocks, right? Stuff that you cannot miss. Like there's a reason I have a clock on every wall in this office, because part of the way my ADHD presents is that if I'm like in the zone, even though my mind is saying, check to see what time it is, if I have to go like this to check it, I won't do it. It is what that is. I need it to be like literally hitting me in the face. Yeah, so that time timers, there's a tool called the Time Tracker Mini. I think I actually have it on my shelf. I'll just describe it for the podcast listeners. So it looks like a little R2-D2 kind of thing with a little like dome on top, and it has two dials. One dial for the total time. It's up to 2 hours, and it does it in 5-minute increments. And the second one is your warning time. So you set the timer, you hit start, it'll be green. When it gets to the warning time, it'll start flashing yellow and stay flashing yellow. And then when you have a few minutes left, it will move to red and be flashing red. Now, the Time Tracker Mini is half the price as the regular time tracker, and you don't need to pull out the manual every time you need to set the time, which is totally what you need to do with the regular time tracker that looks more like a stoplight. But if you're really looking for something that's going to cue you and get your attention to help with transitions and stopping, that's a really great tool. And then just have clocks everywhere. Kristen?
Clarify, Eric. Do you mean analog clocks, first of all? For me, digital, it's like I got to look at it and I might not do the math right.
Okay.
So there's the idea of the difference between those. Then I also have playlists that I actually time out and set and say, this is my shower playlist, and it gives me a cue that way. Also, the programming of lights that can change the color.
Like I know for me, so I got to pick up my son Mondays and Tuesday afternoons at 5:30. So I have my lamp here on Mondays and Tuesdays afternoon. It turns green at like 5:05 because I have to start to stop, which is why it turns green. Kat?
I just want to say that the reason I flipped you off is because you're right. So it was about the clocks. I did not want to put clocks in every room. And a lot of it had to do with aesthetics. I didn't, want to mess up my room. So I found clocks that worked for every room. And I do have them. I hadn't thought about that, Kristen, that mine are also analog, not digital. I do have one in the guest room for my dad that is digital because he likes one that actually projects on to the ceiling. So that helps him tremendously. And I found out that he was having like anxiety sleeping without that. So I got him one for our guest room. The other thing is a watch. Again, hated it, super resistant to it. I don't wear any other jewelry, and that felt like something I didn't want to. But once I did the Apple Watch, it felt less like jewelry and more like, a phone on my wrist. So those were things that I resisted a lot and gave in, and still will flip Eric off for it, for being right.
I mean, the very first accessory that I added to my motorcycle was a clock. That's like my happy place, and I could lose track of time, big time, all on there. So that was the very first accessory that I added to the motorcycle. MJ?
So same as you, I do use smart lights to cue me for time. So my lights down here are automatically set to turn on at 9 o'clock. That's usually when I'll be sitting at my desk. My lights upstairs, when I turn them on, they have a setting where they actually have to turn off 30 minutes after they've been turned on, because that's usually bedtime. If the light goes out and I'm still scrolling on my phone, I better put my phone away. I was also resistant to getting a watch. I know a lot of people use Apple Watch. I use a Samsung watch, but I make mine chime every hour. so that as every hour passes by, like, yes, I'm cued to look at it. I don't really get messages on my watch anyway, but I look at my watch when it buzzes and it's like, oh, another hour has passed. Sometimes it feels like it takes forever. Sometimes it's like, oh man, the time ever go by quickly. And yes, clocks everywhere. If I'm trying to get work done, but I need to be cognizant of stopping work because of appointments or whatever, I have my laptop. Because it's just old and slow, I just put a big clock on there. So if I'm in a Zoom meeting, then I'll see the clock behind me. I'll also sometimes have a big clock on my monitor. I have an ultra wide, so I'll have it in like a corner that's always visible. Same with my taskbar. Every place in this house has a clock because I will not pay attention to it. And next thing I know, it's already dark, especially during winter. It's all the same freaking time of whatever lightness or lack of light is out there. But having this chime every hour has been my biggest lifesaver because, yeah, I don't get messages on my watch. I did that on purpose because this is for me to be cued to look at a clock.
That's awesome. There's an app on iOS called Almost Done or Almost Time, where it will actually, Almost Time. You can program it to tell you like what time it is based on, like, you have it like when there's 5 minutes at the top of the hour, like, and it will actually, not just an alert, but it will actually speak to you to tell you what time it is. I think Talking Timer also does that. Just do a search in your app store, whether you're Google or Android or iOS, and just search like Talking Timer. Good chance something's going to come up for you. All right. Well, I think we are out of time. So let's hand it over to Mr. Curb for a moment of dad.
And on our day of Pink Halloween, how does a vampire know if it had a successful Valentine's Day? It was love at first bite.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's
one to sink your teeth into.
Ooh.
Couldn't help it.
Oh.
Will, you are inspiring me.
I heart both of you.
MJ's gone. What did you just say?
Ryan said it left a bad taste in his mouth.
Oh man, can we keep going? That's awesome.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for being here, for asking your questions, and we will be back here next month, same time. And our friend Scoots from the Sleep With Me podcast will be joining us to answer sleep questions. And if you have never listened to his podcast, go listen to it. Even if it's not to go to sleep to, it's just the strangest, most random, tangential, mumbling podcast that you've ever heard, and it's fantastic. It's just strange. So enjoy it. All right, y'all. Have a great rest of the day and a great month, and we will catch you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening, and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHDrewired.com. You can find time-stamped summaries and additional resources for each episode. Apply to join our free and secret Facebook community. Learn more about our award-winning intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. Join the Adult Study Hall virtual co-working membership community. Find all the other podcasts on the ADHD Rewired podcast network. Sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content that you won't hear anywhere else. And use the search tool to find episodes on specific topics. You can do all of this at ADHDrewired.com. While you're there, click on the Patreon button. If you are a regular listener, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to you, the listener, but it's not free to produce. Plus, patrons get cool perks like ad-free episodes and access to recordings of coaching calls, and $25 a month patrons can join me once a month for a group coaching call. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHD Rewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. Subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube to see selective interviews and other videos I've made. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends, family, your therapists, your coaches, doctors, siblings, parents. And if you, your coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at the website, ADHDrewired.com. If you're a member of CHAD, ADA, or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this show and all the shows on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. And if you really loved this particular episode, please hit share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I do count on you to help spread this message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other app that supports reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at Audible by going to audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Here is my list of must-listen-to audiobooks updated July 2021. Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Attached by Amir Levin and Rachel Heller. Atomic Habits by James Clear. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Crucial Conversations by Carrie Patterson. The Coaching Habit by Michael Stainer. The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Rest by Alex Sujong Kim Pang. The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. Make It Stick. The Science of Successful Learning by Peter Brown. The Productivity Project by Chris Bailey. Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions, Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. I always recommend to my coaches and admin that they read that book. The One Thing by Gary Keller, a required reading for all of our coaching group members. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Baden. The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. And if you're looking for something a little bit more magical, I have fallen in love with the Harry Potter series, and the narrator, Jim Dale, is amazing. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus, all of her stuff is great, starting with Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, and The Power of Vulnerability. And if you're an entrepreneur or leader, be sure to check out her book, Dare to Lead. Do you have something that you would like to share? Click on the podcast tab at ADHD Rewired. Click the button to be a guest at the top of the page and schedule a 15-minute interview. This is Eric Tibbers, reminding you to keep learning, growing, and connecting. Self-care is not selfish. No matter what you get done or don't get done, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. And we don't need to do them in the hardest way possible. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.